In chapter 15 of Spy Family, we got introduced to what can only be described as a sports chapter or a PE chapter, but it really does focus on the sports element, and that's something that I really found to be interesting with Spy Family because obviously it's a shonen, but it's not really an action shonen, it's not a sports shonen, it's sort of an in-between kind of thing, kind of a slice of life with a lick of everything, because it definitely focuses a lot on Anya as a character, and seeing some other genres being introduced into the series, even if it's only for one chapter, and it really makes sure that every chapter isn't as bland or repetitive as you may expect some of this stuff to be if they had just stuck with the whole slice of life route and just seeing her go through school every day. But it's really cool that they are actually introducing some of the other subjects in school like PE and using it to push a sports element to the series, even if it's not really going to be a lasting thing. I mean, it is probably going to happen a few times given that she's actually in school, and PE is going to happen more than just once. I mean, it's probably not going to be dodgeball every time, but it's going to be some sports or physical activity that we're going to see Anya go through from time to time, and that's something that I really enjoy about this chapter, how they really introduced that. Now, during this PE session or this dodgeball match, we got some really interesting and cool stuff with this chapter, like the comedy aside, because I'm not really going to mention too much about the comedy because, well, it's a comedy series. I don't really need to go too in depth about what's going on in terms of the comedy, let's be honest here, so I'm just going to go through what's actually going on throughout the chapter instead. Starting off, Anya, through another classmate, finds out that there is a chance that they'll be getting a Stella Star if they become the MVP of the dodgeball match during this PE class. Now, this is something that really pushes the participation morale, or whatever you want to call it. Everyone is so pumped to becoming the MVP that they're giving everything they've got. Now, ultimately, that wasn't the case at all. It seems like someone tricked them. Whoever started that rumor was full of shit, but that's okay. Because in the end, it really showed that these students, when they want to, can be really enthusiastic about something like dodgeball, right? Like, it's a really cool way of just making sure that the students try their hardest. Now, I'm not sure who started this rumor, if it was that girl or if it was some upperclassman, as this other girl was saying, but whoever it was a clever move regardless, even if it wasn't their intention. Now, Anya and Damien's relationship this chapter was really cool as well, and even though we don't really see any huge results at the end of the chapter, I think it really shows that the character progression and development between these two are really something that we should be looking out for, because obviously we know that Anya wants to be friends with Damien for reasons that are quite obvious because of her adoptive father, Twilight. However, Damien doesn't really seem too keen about being friends with her, mostly, I mean, although it's not really mentioned in this series, I think it is pretty obvious that the reason he's staying away from her is because she kind of humiliated him when they first met. She literally punched this dude in the face on their first day, and since then, it hasn't really quite been the same. I guess he's kind of embarrassed at the fact that he was punched by a girl. I mean, you can tell he's trying to make improvements given the whole thing with the food that he did like some chapters back, and obviously in this chapter, although he doesn't want to admit it, he also protects Anya from that dodgeball throw, which ultimately gets him eliminated from that match. So he's not completely a bad guy, I would say. Like, he is a rich, spoiled kid, definitely, but he isn't a bad person. There's a lot of room for him to grow as a good person and someone that Anya is going to enjoy being friends with, rather than having to force herself to be friends with him as it is right now. Like, she wants to become friends with him because of her adoptive father. Like, initially she wasn't really interested in becoming his friend out of her own free will, but I think that is what it's going to lead to. I think they're going to become really good friends at some point in the future. I think it's pretty obvious that that's what it's really building up to, and I really look forward to that. Okay, so let's talk about the big fucking elephant in the room, and I mean quite literally. Like, this Bill Watkins kid, there is no way that this kid is 6 years old, alright? Like, this is definitely something that we can't overlook. And Bill Watkins, he looks like he would be like 25, but he's apparently 6 years old. It's specifically stated that he is 6 years, and he looks like he's the same age as Anya's adoptive father, Twilight. Like, how is this even possible? I mean, he throws quite hard as well. Like, this man, I mean, sure, he is the child of some military figure, but at the same time, that does not explain his physique. Like, that's not how it works. You can't just become a super soldier by birth. That's definitely not right. Anyway, let's talk about him, because he is certainly a character that stood out this chapter. In fact, I would say that excluding Anya herself, he's the one character that stood out the most. So Bill Watkins, this super soldier of a child, that's what I'm gonna call him because that's literally what he is, whether it's stated or not, whether it's canonically debunked, I'm going to call him a super soldier kid because he looks wrong. He looks too strong for his own good. He is definitely not 6. Like, there's definitely some foul work at play here, I'm just saying. But regardless, seeing what he did in this chapter really put Anya's team in a tough spot because he was just throwing these balls and he was just knocking everyone out like without any problems, right? There was no issues at all. And that is something that I really found to be kind of expected after I saw what he looked like. Like, you can't expect any different when you saw him, like from the first panel you saw him. It's like, yeah, this guy is going to rock this team flat. There's no way they are going to win against this guy. Like, it's impossible. And that's exactly what happened ultimately. Like, they didn't win against this guy, and who can blame them? Like, if you're up against that, you're not winning. That's just how it is. Now, what I found interesting about that, however, is not just that Anya's team went up against him and lost. I mean, obviously that was expected. What I found really interesting is the fact that despite his physique and despite how easily he was knocking people out, the one person he wasn't able to do that with, at least as easily, was Anya, because Anya has one trump card that no one knows about, not even her own family, which is that she can read everyone's mind. So what she did this chapter was actually quite phenomenal. She used inner monologue to her advantage. Like, this is something you don't see in manga, like, ever, okay? Like, I've never seen this before in my life. She used his inner monologue, like he was thinking to himself how he was gonna throw this ball, and Anya was just dodging based on what he was thinking. This was phenomenal work by Tetsuya Endo. I'm gonna have to give him or her props for this. It was a fantastic display, and it's kind of what sold me on the chapter, to be honest. Like, although this Bill Watkins character was definitely something that stood out to me, the way Anya handled the inner monologue and used it to her advantage is definitely the highlight of this chapter for me, because even though she didn't really get an advantage to the point where she would win the match, because at the end of the day she needed some kind of physical help in that regard, let's be honest, because she couldn't really throw the ball properly, which ended up causing her to lose, but she was able to dodge these balls, hence the word dodgeball. I think you could quite honestly say that Anya put the word dodge in dodgeball this chapter. At least that's how I felt, and I really want to see more of that inner monologue stuff, except in various different situations. I want to see her use that to her advantage a lot of times. In fact, it would be kind of funny to see it in a test or something in school, if she's actually trying to read everyone's minds and finding out what the answers for said questions are. That would be really cool to see, to be honest, but whether we're gonna get that, I don't really know. It kind of comes down to whether she's the type of girl who would cheat in such a regard, or if she wants to genuinely become a better student on her own. If I'm being honest, I'm kind of guessing on the latter, but at the same time, you might see that at some point, even if it isn't gonna be like something that you see all the time. Especially since she wants to remain with her family, which means that she has to remain at the school. She's probably gonna do whatever it takes to do that, and I would really like to see that inner monologue sort of trope, or whatever you want to call it. I want to see more of that. Anyway, that's gonna be it for this review. I hope you like this. I would love to know what you guys think about this chapter down below in the comments. Like, did you enjoy seeing this dodgeball chapter? Personally, it's probably a top for me. I mean, it's kind of hard to give you like a number one chapter out of the ones we've had because they're all fantastic, but this one stood out a lot to me, and I really hope that the series keep climbing in quality, because so far it's been climbing in quality ever since the first chapter, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. Like, if you have 15 chapters of that same streak, who's to say it's gonna stop now, right? Anyway, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. This has been Chaotic Plus, and I'll see you next time.